Welcome back to Crime Besties to another episode. Hey Meg, how are ya?
Oh, man. I'm here.
Yeah?
I think, my brain with me. So I think we're
Well
good.
done you.
Yeah.
We were just talking before we hit record and you have had quite the week.
Well, so have you. Let's be honest. We've both had a week.
I've had a very heavy emotional week and I mean there's just a lot going on and so many balls up in the air at the minute and it just it's that one little thing. Like I thought, okay, I'm getting through this. I'm doing well. I've got shit sorted. I'm coping. And then one thing happens, which in isolation, not a big deal.
No, but it's just that's what makes the cup runneth over.
It broke me.
Yeah.
It actually broke me.
Yeah.
I was crying at basketball training this week. So
Hey, we've all been there.
I don't know. It was just all a bit much. But
Yeah.
I am... sometimes a bit of a cry is all you need to then
This is it, because
move
we have to
onwards
just
and upwards.
be honest with ourselves that it's tough. Some days are not good.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel like that and feel overwhelmed by this stuff. I mean, life is tough.
Yeah.
And if we don't acknowledge it, we turn into a mess at the end of it. So take care of yourself and, acknowledge that things are tough.
Yeah.
And that, look, someone else will come around the corner and, might have something else going on that you kind of go, oh my God, in hindsight, my stuff's shit is small, but it's your shit. It's your stuff that you're dealing with. And therefore that is your most important, like someone else's stuff is tough too for them, but your stuff is your stuff.
Peter has this thing that he always says whenever, I get overwhelmed or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? Everyone has their shit.
Everyone does.
Everyone has their shit. It was like during COVID when people would be like, we're all in the same boat, but we're not all on the same body of water. And it's true. Like some days, everyone's got their shit, but the smell of that shit varies day to day and and whether or not you can get through it. But anyway, I feel a lot better today.
So one way I know how I'm feeling in terms of stress stuff is I've worked out, and this is not isolated to, I know I'm in a different car and I've been in for a very, very long time, the same car. And now that I'm in another car, I'm like, no, it's not the car, it's me. That when I get in the car and if I have to readjust my rearview mirror, right? Wait, I know you're looking at me weird, but if I have to readjust my rearview mirror, I know I'm carrying some stress.
Oh, because
my body must sit in my chair differently, and I can't. If I'm like stressed and I'm like and I'm feeling like I'm not sitting tall enough or whatever in my seat, then I can't see my rearview through my rearview mirror.
Wow.
Am I weird?
No, not at all. I think that's really astute of you to recognise. I just don't even know that I would think about readjusting my mirror. But
as I take off in the morning, like this morning, I was like, oh shit, I've got to readjust that mirror because I'm actually sitting taller now than I was last night because I had sleep and and I'm starting my day.
Better.
Whereas last night when I got in my car and I was driving around with doing the fucking mirroring taxi service that I did last night, I had to readjust the mirror last night lower because I'm sitting lower. I'm tired.
Our kids had footy training last night and you were saying that you haven't actually sportified your car yet. You didn't have a
didn't have towels on hand.
A bad
for wet bodies.
So how did you go getting home?
The car needs a freaking vacuum now and a clean because there was dirty shoes that came in the car and
grass.
And because I wasn't switched on enough, like exhausted with the ferrying back and forth, I didn't say to him, take your shoes off before you get in or anything. And so I literally this morning got in the car to get out some rubbish that had also been left in the car and went, I now have to vacuum the car.
Yeah, and it'll be. It's probably worth waiting a day until it dries. Yeah. I feel like I might have even spoken about this on the podcast before, but my mother-in-law reckoned back in the day she used to keep a roll of black garbage bags in her car.
My mum did that.
Cut out the head of it and make them wear that home. I just don't know how safe that would be, like seatbelt safety wise, like slipping under. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway,
that's true. Well, back in those days, they probably just didn't even have car seats and stuff either. So
yeah, that's it. It was a free for all. How we all survived, I do not know.
Oh God, no. No, I think at one stage we had the full conversation with my parents about the car seats. Like what car seats sort of did we have? I don't remember us having car seats. And Mum was like, "You didn't." Or there was like this Moses basket thing my mum used to have and
Yeah.
just plonk on the back seat.
Doesn't that blow your mind?
Absolutely blows
yeah,
my
that's
mind.
crazy. I still remember like a booster seat that I had, but it was
Yes.
literally just like a
This bum.
plastic bum bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It was literally a booster. Like it
Yeah.
was boosted your bum up a bit, but there was no back of it.
Or no extra safety. I don't even know what the purpose of it
No.
is, just so it doesn't cut your neck off.
Yeah,
like,
so you were just higher up for the seatbelt.
Yeah.
But in terms of a car accident, you're fucking screwed.
I still remember it was tan with a really nice mission brown like seat pad.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
too, like back to like, I mean, these days, if you're going to take extra kids, it's like, did you have enough car seats though? Like I had to take
Yeah.
yours and another and Brody, and I like had to make sure I had my extra car seats in the car to like have them all to have boosters, and and they're 8 years of age, like
Yeah.
they're not like they're little kids. And I was thinking about it, going, by the time I was like 8 and my younger brother was 6, and my older brother would have been like 10, and the next door neighbour's kids, so the 5 kids plus an adult would all pile into the one car to get driven to school every morning. And one of those cars was a tiny little Datsun, plus the school bags. Like, where did we all fit?
On each other's laps, probably.
Literally, we would have piled on each other's laps, and that's how you just would have.
But I remember that was just normal back
Yeah.
in the day. You would just have 4 or 5 kids in the back seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, let alone the back of a ute.
Oh, fun
used to
times,
do that
fun
too, yeah.
times.
man.
This week, we are doing an international case,
Yes.
but I just wanted to touch on before we get going, because it'll be annoying if I talk about this mid-episode. But how much do you love an accent?
Oh my gosh, I love an Irish accent too. I work with an Irish lady, and I just I love it.
work with an Irish lady. So my Irish friend is the one who suggested this case,
Yes.
a tractor.
Yep,
Oh my God, I could listen to her talk
Yeah.
all day, every day.
same. Yeah,
Oh, it's just
but
glorious.
what I also love about the Irish though isn't just their accent; it's their
turn of phrase.
turn of phrase at times, and just their backwards way of coming at things occasionally. There's
Yeah.
actually, for this particular case, at the very beginning of like one of the documentaries for this, there's a guy who says, so I was the last person to see her before she died, except for the other person who saw her.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching that. It is so funny.
I'm like, oh my God, I love that. So
Yeah, because
Irish
he's like,
of
well,
him.
yeah, I didn't kill her.
No.
I was the last person to see her alive,
Other
except
than-
for the person
other
who
than the
killed
other
her. But
person.
yeah, other than the other person. And I love it how they go like at the end of everything. It's so good.
Love
It's
it.
so good. I love an accent. And then obviously there were French accents in
just
this
to
too.
boot.
Just beautiful. It sounds so elegant and
They can say anything and it sounds delightful.
I know. It's
Yeah.
just nice. And then our accents I find are so harsh. You know when you go overseas and you're talking in an Australian accent and it does sound so harsh against other languages. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh God.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Have you been to Ireland?
No, I haven't.
Peter's
No.
been, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get to Ireland. I've been to Scotland, but didn't get across to Ireland. I really, 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 really wanted to go because I think it would be stunning.
I mean, just looking at the landscapes from this case,
Yeah.
it looks beautiful.
Yes, very
Absolutely
nice.
beautiful. It's on the list for sure.
Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
I do have some shout outs for today before we get started with the case. So we've had a few coffees bought for us by Balloon Joy Adelaide. Please check her out on Instagram. Oh my God. If you're having a party in Adelaide, you need to get onto this lady because her balloon installations are phenomenal and she's
They
got
blow
so
my
much
mind.
variety in there. It's balloons and
Yeah.
it just looks so effective
So
and so
creative.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so creative.
Incredible.
Amazing. I also have a few other shout outs. So these are people who've contacted us on Instagram mostly that I looked at this week and have shared our page and have put us sort of out there into their little, their little online worlds as well, which we really, really appreciate
so love
because
that.
we're definitely seeing that reflected in the number of people who are listening to us each week. So we really appreciate the shout outs. So we've got the garden at Jason Manor and
And again, those gardens. Holy cow.
oh my God,
Jeez. Amazing.
amazing.
I am the last person who can garden, and so I very much appreciate people who can.
You're like looking at that
I love
going,
looking at
"Oh,
beautiful
yes."
gardens going, if only I could.
and a country mum. So I think
Yes.
the Garden at Jason Manor account, the lady from there found out about us through a country mum who's a Queensland mum living on the land.
Yeah.
And again, I just love the aesthetic of their Instagram pages.
Totally.
They're amazing. So give them a follow if that's the kind of content that you like. And also we had Leanne Robinson and Trish Muscat who sent us some really lovely messages as well. So thanks so much, guys, for your support and for contacting us. We love it when people want to engage.
Absolutely.
So please keep that coming.
Yes, and we were just saying before, like we get blown away by people like contacting us and telling us they're enjoying the podcast, because we have moments where we're like, we don't believe that people listen. And then we look at our analytics and go, oh my God, but they are.
People are actually listening, and it's growing week on week, and we just, it blows our minds.
Absolutely.
This morning I was chatting with I do BFT, body fit training, and I was talking to a couple of my gym buddies this morning. So a bit of a shout out to Fee, Erin and Jules, because they all listen. And Fee was saying to me this morning, she's like, how do you have time to even do this? She's like, do you just have an ear pod in all the time and be like, nope, sorry, don't talk to me. I'm like, I wish.
Yeah, I know. I get caught out sometimes at work. I'll have it in like while I'm doing stuff. Then someone will come into my office and I'm like, and they're like, oh my God, sorry. Like, as if like I'm doing something like, work oriented on there. I'm just like, oh, no, come in. Like I need to stop doing what I'm doing.
It's fine. It's fine. So look, we do our best. We were talking this week. Neither of us have had probably the normal amount of time we would have to research this week, but we've done our absolute best, and we have to fit it in and around everything else that goes on in our lives. I was up until really late last night, and then I was up early this morning for gym. So I just sort of, we fit it in where we can.
We run on the smell of an oily rag. We'll be right.
Thursday nights for me are always just a bit of a shocker.
But yeah, exactly.
Ahead of a Friday recording.
But that's where like you kind of, I feel like, you get through a week of like that, of like where I'm like trying to fit it in and everyone feeling like, we'll have an episode today. Absolutely. Like, kind of stuff. But like, you feel exhausted by it, but then you get those beautiful messages and you kind of go, well, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Like, if we're putting in this effort, but people are enjoying the effort we're putting in, then we'll keep coming back and keep doing it.
Yeah, that's it. As long as people still listen, we will still make the podcast.
Absolutely.
So thank you. All right, let's get into today's case. So today, now, I'm just going to straight up, we will probably butcher names today.
Oh, 100%.
And names of places and of people.
There'll be places where at times when I just go like, and I said it correctly. I did. Just mumbled it.
So we're really sorry. We're really sorry in advance. We are going to do our best.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about the case of Sophie Toscan du Plantier, who is a French lady who was murdered in West Cork in Ireland.
Now, the name of the place where she was murdered, can we just clarify? Because I've heard it Skull and Shoal.
I think it's Skull.
And I was going with Skull.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So the only reason I'm saying that with such conviction is because I actually went on to, you know how you can like Wikipedia things, and they've got and hear it, and it was Skull, and then most of the documentaries were Skull.
I think most places, and then more so like if I heard English or Irish people saying it, it was more often Skull. Yeah, but then I'd just be like, oh, but someone else is saying it a different way. Like,
I'm pretty sure it's Skull.
Cool.
So Sophie Bugnol was born on the 28th of July in 1957 in Paris, France, to parents Marguerite Bugnol and Georges Bugnol. Georges was a dentist and Marguerite was actually a deputy mayor for the Central District in Paris.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Wow.
So, my God.
What an impressive woman.
Yeah, and you can absolutely tell in interviews with them that they are a professional couple. They're very well spoken. Yeah. I mean, obviously they have had an enormous tragedy in their lives, and it has, taken
definitely
effect.
Impacted them.
Absolutely
for sure.
had an impact.
Yeah.
But they are really lovely, down to earth people.
Yeah.
Sophie had two brothers, Bertrand and Stéphane Bugnol. Stéphane has sort of stayed out of the limelight a lot. He hasn't done a lot of media interviews, but Bertrand has sort of been a bit of a family spokesperson, and he's definitely sort of been at the forefront of getting Sophie's case out there, I think, and for pushing the police along, and certainly helping Sophie's son, Daniel.
Yes.
Pierre Louis. Sorry.
Yeah.
getting myself already confused.
That's all good.
Pierre Louis, and to find some resolution for the family and get some, I don't know, justice, if that's what we can even call it, for Sophie.
Yep.
All right.
Alrighty.
So there's not a lot out there around Sophie's upbringing. I know it was a fairly pleasant upbringing. They lived in an apartment basically in the centre of Paris. So you can imagine maybe what that might have been like.
Imagine growing up in Paris. I mean, I remember standing in Paris like going, this is a whole other world. Like, how do you get used to seeing this every day and walking to work? Or, like I remember
to school.
Oh God, I just kind of like, I don't know. Melbourne's a nice city, I guess, but geez, nothing like that.
No.
It's impressive. Like just, wow.
Yeah. So Sophie was a filmmaker, a producer, and I guess in a way sort of a writer. She did a lot of writing. She had some really interesting ideas for things that she wanted to produce. So she wanted to produce a series, and this was, I think, not long before she passed away. She was trying to get funding for this project, but she wanted to produce a series on body fluids. So she wanted to produce a series of individual shows all about different body fluids. So like blood, pus, semen, urine. So I think she was quite eccentric in her interests in that way.
Yeah.
And maybe a little liked things on the darker side, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in any way that was her personality, because by all accounts it wasn't.
No, because I did read like there was a particular piece that she wrote not long before she passed away. That was very detailed around how she had seen a particular animal that had been attacked by another animal and found on the side of the road or something, or a path out where she was walking, and it was quite gruesome how she described this. So I think she had a side of her, like that she played with in writing and in her work that was on that darker side. Yeah.
So Sophie was married very early on. What was her first husband's name? I've just had an absolute mental blank. Hold on. I can't remember.
No,
but
I'll pull it up
off the top of my head. Thank you. And they had a son together, but their marriage only lasted about 12 months. But they did have a very amicable relationship in terms of raising their son, Pierre Louis.
Yep.
They divorced. Pierre Louis was young, and his account of his upbringing is that he had a really, really close relationship with his mum. Because it was just the two of them for such a long time, they were incredibly close. He lived with his mum throughout the week and then used to see his dad on the weekends. When Pierre Louis was around 10 years of age, I think, Sophie met a very famous director named Daniel Toscan du Plantier. Did you find his name?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think actually. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm going. I don't think I actually read it. I don't think
I have heard his name. No, I have.
Yeah,
I have
it's
heard
not
his
in
name.
Wikipedia. It's not on anything that like. It's not coming up. It just brings up Daniel whenever with me searching it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Daniel, being her second husband, very famous film producer in France, one of the biggest producers in France.
Yeah.
He owned a production company. He also did some directing and lots of different things within the film industry and was very highly regarded.
Yeah.
He had such a high profile that one of his best friends was Jacques Chirac. So the former, well, at the time, current
my biggest
president.
memory of him is like, and the winner is Sidonie.
Yeah.
I always go back to like those moments.
Yeah. I love that that's where your brain's gone.
Yeah.
With that one.
Yeah.
So look, he lived a certain life being that he was in the film industry. And even though Sophie, who was, she was an incredibly beautiful woman, very attractive, but she was very understated. She wasn't showy. She wasn't the type to wear lots of makeup and glitzy clothes and that kind of thing. But she sort of did keep in the background a fair bit, but would still attend certain red carpet events and all of those
clearly
things.
a natural beauty though too. She did not need a ton of makeup to be able to just pull it off at those events either. So she was stunning like that. But she didn't feel comfortable in those environments.
No. So much so that I guess she really craved solitude and craved, life or time outside of her busy life in Paris.
Yeah.
And so she decided that she needed a retreat, and she'd visited Ireland, I think, a few times as a child and loved it.
Yeah.
So she decided to actually purchase a property in Ireland, a retreat, I guess, somewhere for her to go.
Yeah.
I think she was quite introverted and therefore craved that solitude. So it eventually led her, she looked at a few places around Ireland, but she was definitely attracted to sort of that West Cork coast.
Yeah.
And she came across this little farmhouse and absolutely fell in love.
Oh, and I don't blame her. Holy crap.
Well,
It's
okay.
stunning.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
But the house, right? No electricity.
Yeah.
Wood-fired, like one wood-fired oven and a wood-fired heat, an open fireplace to heat the whole thing in Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so remote. There are,
so remote. So people said when this sort of occurred, trying to find this place was a nightmare. I mean, this is pre-Google Maps as well. To try and find this place is just near on impossible. Like people took forever to get there and
even
find it.
people who lived in the little township of Skull didn't know
where
because it was beyond the township.
Yeah. And we're talking like rocky terrain too. Like it's it's hilly and
it's like one lane roads. Like you can get one car in.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you'd do if you had an oncoming car coming the other way.
Well, I guess you rarely would.
Yeah. It's probably rarely an issue.
Yeah. But I mean, I totally get it because that, to me, she wanted to just simplicity. And that's exactly what she got there.
The police described her home in one of the documents that I was reading, which I think that they documented this on the day that they found her body was found. But her house was they wrote that it was very simply decked out, basically. Yeah. So she had
wasn't the glitz and glamour of what she had back in Paris.
Had minimal of everything. She didn't have much cutlery.
Yeah.
She had 2 mugs, 2 wine glasses, she didn't have a lot of anything.
But that's the thing, because she would go there either on her own or with her and her son. Like that was sort of really...
she'd sometimes take a friend or her mum.
On occasion there'd be one other person with her. Maybe, she might have lashed out on the occasion, had 2 people visiting her.
Yeah.
But that was what it was all about, was quiet time.
Yeah.
And I love that she in one of the bedrooms she raised the bed so that she could look out the window, remove the curtain and everything so that she could have the lighthouse that she could see in the distance. With the light would then shine in her room and things, and she could look out the window and watch that from her bed. So she had her bed raised
and stuff. A metre and 1.2 metres or something off the ground, so that she could see out of the window.
Yeah.
Interesting to note, none of her windows had window coverings.
No, and the thing is, I think this gets spoken about as in this way of she wanted people looking in and this.
There was no one
there. There's this, the comment I think in one of the documentaries was she was, what this French woman might be wandering around naked in her house, because it's what French women do. And, I'm sorry, but she was living there, on odd occasions. She wasn't there for long. She'd go for small trips and things. And when she was there, she was alone. She didn't need curtains. There was no one wandering past. There was no road out the front and cars driving past. Good on her. Have the fresh air and the fresh light coming through your house.
Sorry, but who's saying she was walking around her house naked?
Oh, that's what's implied by it.
Fuck off.
Yeah, and
no, she wasn't.
No.
Oh, and even if she was, who cares? Why would you comment on it?
No, this is it. It was so to me it was such a misogynistic kind of approach. This of she had no curtains.
Absolutely.
Whatever. She can do what she wants. There was no one else out there.
Her nearest neighbours were, I'm going to say close in inverted commas, but they were still a decent walk up the road.
Oh, there was
across the other side of the road. There's no way they would have been able to see in from where they were anyway.
Especially this particular room where, that they were commenting about, because it was up high.
And it looked out away from the other house.
Yeah.
Which... she probably wouldn't
the
have
way
been
the
able
hill
to see
fell, kind of stuff. It would you just would have a clear view of everything.
Yeah,
whatever.
They say she lived a really simple life when she was there too. In terms of even the things that she ate, she'd take a loaf of bread, some honey, and a bit of butter.
Yeah,
and that's what she'd and some wine, and that's what she'd live off for. The couple of days that she was there. Oh well, she's not silly.
No. Love that.
Should we get to the day that it happened now that we've sort of
set the scene?
We've set the scene. There's not a huge amount of...
We'll put pictures of the property on our socials and stuff too to get that visual of it too.
I think it helps because in researching this, the first things I did, I was listening to a lot of things.
Yeah.
But once I saw it, I was like, oh, now I can see exactly what it all meant and the way it all panned out.
Absolutely.
So on the 23rd of December in 1996, Sophie was only 39 years of age at this time. She was found by her neighbour.
Mm-hmm. Shirley Foster.
Yes, she was dressed in her... So Shirley, she was actually just leaving to go... I think she was actually going to church. No, she was going Christmas shopping because it was right before Christmas. She was going up to the shops to get the last-minute Christmas presents. We've all been there.
Yep.
And she was driving down the road and something caught her eye. And then she actually drove past and then went, oh, actually, I think I need to go back and have a look and see what that was. That was a bit weird.
I think what more grabbed her attention was the fact that the gate was open. Now, so there's like a number of gates on this property, but this is like the front gate of it. And they kind of shared, like where their houses were, it was actually sort of a shared access kind of area. So this gate, it actually kept livestock out in, kind of thing as well. So living in those kind of rural areas, if a gate's shut, you shut it behind you. Like that's the rule of thumb. If you never ever leave a gate open that has been closed. So, and everyone said that Sophie was very diligent about this particular gate, that it was, she never left that open. So when she saw that this gate was open, that was very unusual. So
but then something caught her eye.
And it wasn't just at a jar, it was wide open. Again, I'll put photos of that.
Yeah, I think that'd be good for people to be able to see.
Yeah.
What she discovered when she sort of backed back and got out of her car was a body that was unrecognisable to her. The face was unrecognisable. The body was dressed in white pyjamas, like long john type pyjamas, because we're talking December in Ireland, freezing cold. But the interesting thing was that the person lying there was wearing boots and they were fully laced up, like big winter boots that were fully laced up.
Her dressing gown was not on, but it was with her. Mm-hmm. So it was underneath things. But so she obviously did have that on to begin with.
Yeah. The body was sort of covered or rolled, kind of like tangled up in barbed wire and these briars that are, oh my God, again, we should put a photo of that up because these briars, the spikes on them are so long and they look so menacing.
Yes, they really are.
So obviously the neighbour has then alerted the police.
And Elfie went to her husband. Sorry, I shouldn't explain that. Elfie was her husband who was with her. He went up to Sophie's house, ran up there to check her. Because they couldn't recognise who this person was. He went to go and check on her and sort of say to her, there's someone around that's not okay.
Yeah.
So he went to the house at that point.
So at this point, I think they knew Sophie had come to the home, but they hadn't spoken to her or anything.
No,
since
they knew
arrived.
she was around, but hadn't.
Hadn't. I think that was pretty typical, though. Sophie did sort of, by all accounts, sort of keep to herself, and it wasn't unusual that they hadn't spoken with her. When Elfie figured that he couldn't raise anybody at Sophie's house,
whether he went there to see, is this Sophie? Or whether he went there just to tell her,
I guess he was probably hoping in a way that he was just going to tell her to be careful. Well, we'll see. But then, what was the wife's name? Sorry,
Shirley.
Shirley, thank you. Shirley stayed with the body while Elfie contacted the Garda.
Yeah,
the Garda Síochána. I can't.
It's the Garda, and do you know what that's short for?
What?
The Guardians of the Peace.
Oh,
yeah. I'm not going to try and say the actual proper word for it.
Like Síochána or something like that. Please,
Garda.
The Garda.
But the actual the actual translation of the full word is Guardians of the Peace.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's
Guardians
nice.
of the Galaxy kind of stuff.
That.
I love it.
Oh, that's really nice. So obviously, because she lives in such a remote place, it's coming up for Christmas. Mm-hmm. It actually took the guards a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And when they did get there, they sent two fairly junior police officers or junior guards.
To make it very clear, had been no murders in this area in living memory.
Uh-huh.
So they have there's no one on the force in this area who has experience with this and knows how to deal with this.
I saw a guard interviewed and he basically said, the worst thing I'm not even going to try the accent.
I was like, oh, she's going to do it.
He was like, the worst thing I ever had to deal with was a traffic infringement that somebody didn't want to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's completely out of their wheelhouse. Yeah.
And look, to their credit, they obviously recognised that and called in
other people.
From Dublin. So they've called in homicide squad and crime scene investigators.
Yeah. But the actual day of finding the body, because this is the thing, I mean, we're talking to bring someone down from Dublin, that was a 5-hour trip?
It was nearly 5 hours, especially given the Christmas traffic apparently.
And let alone then trying to find this, as we said, it's not exactly, on a main route.
No, and that's what they said. The contingent from Dublin arrived in West Cork, arrived in Skull and didn't know where to go.
No.
So they had to go to a phone box because all of the police weren't at the police station. They were out at the body.
Yeah.
And
we're talking 1996 here. So it's pre a lot of mobile phony kind of access. And
that's it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that there would have been any mobile phone access out there anyway. There wasn't even electricity.
Service, let alone, yeah, exactly.
So, look, it took a very long time for the right people to get there. So,
so
this included the coroner. Now, the coroner, it was his birthday on the day on the 23rd.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't actually at work. And there was one coroner for all of Ireland.
You're joking.
No.
I didn't realise that. I just figured there was this guy was the closest one. But no.
He was the one.
Oh, wow.
And it was his birthday, so he had the day off. So it wasn't until the 24th that he actually
got down there. So her body remained at the scene, uncovered, nothing was done to protect the scene.
They went to... One of the guards went to the local hardware store and got a tarp because it had started raining. Mm-hmm. And they covered the body with the tarp, but they didn't seal off any of the crime scene. People were walking all over, touching things. And because anytime anything happens in a small country town, bloody everyone knows about it in about 30 seconds.
Yes.
And so many people, we'll get to this a little bit later too, but a lot of people turned up and were just wandering around, having a look, going up to Elfie's place for a coffee or a tea.
Yeah. But so her body was there for 28 hours.
28, yeah.
Which is just, as a crime scene is one thing of the damage that will cause to the crime scene, but just also as her family, to know that then she was just, I don't know, just left there. That's awful. Yeah. Ugh.
Horrible.
Yep.
Oh, so when, I guess, the more expert police arrived, so we're talking coroner, homicide squad and crime scene investigators, they took control of the scene and started to gather some evidence. Mm-hmm. They tried to establish a time of death and they were looking around to see what had happened. And what did they find at the crime scene?
So at the crime scene, obviously, as we said, they found her dressing gown laying on the ground, but there was also this there was a lot of blood. Mm-hmm. There was a particular block, a concrete slab, which I think weighed about 23 kilos. It was pretty hefty, which they believed was used, and also a piece of slate, which was very bloody, that was found near the body as well. So these are obviously the weapons that were used, and clearly they're weapons that weren't brought with this person. They were clearly ones that were found around where the body was left. So at the scene, that was it was a very traumatic kind of scene, obviously, a fairly impromptu scene by what they were gathering.
Yeah, I've heard them describe it as it was a frenzied kind of scene because of just how significant and how many injuries were inflicted, and especially it was definitely a targeted thing and murder was the intent because it was all of the injuries to Sophie were really concentrated around her head.
Yeah.
And so that they think at this time, I guess, upon first inspection, that 23 kilo cement concrete I don't know, block or,
Yeah.
you know.
I've got photos I can put up as well again of that.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
that has been literally dropped on her head. Like, that's
And
how
so
she's died.
Looking at that, someone's got to be pretty strong to be able to do that. So the other things they found at the scene, which including the house, etc. The house itself, there was found a smear of blood on now back and front of the house is confusing because of the way it is, but we'll call it the back. It was the less used, less obvious door of the house. There was a clear front of in terms of if you drove up to the house, there is a particular door you would have gone to enter the property as someone, I guess, as a guest, whereas someone who lived there differently might have used the other door, but it wasn't a door you visually saw as you approached the house.
Yep.
So there was a smear of blood on that door, which turned out to be Sophie's. But how that got there and where this attack began or what have you is then interesting.
Interestingly, there was no other evidence found around that blood smear, so
No.
it's not like they could see. I mean, I guess
See
it's
that there
hard
was a
because
struggle there or anything.
nor could they see any blood drops or anything like that because this is like a grassy knoll basically leading up to the door.
Yes.
There is a gravel pavement, but again, they didn't, or because it was raining then, like shit would have gotten washed away.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Sorry
right.
for interrupting.
The only other major key, interesting fact they found really was her car. The car seat in the front driver's seat was pushed right back. So Sophie wasn't a particularly tall person. I couldn't tell you how tall she was from my notes.
I think she was 5'4".
5'4", so it's pretty much ish where I am.
Average,
average height kind of for a woman. Whereas the seat was pushed right back to sort of indicate the potential of someone of 6 foot plus had maybe been in the driver's seat potentially. Another thing that people talk about that was seen was that there were 2 wine glasses on the drying rack of the sink, which personally I don't think is anything. I know there's sort of that people take this as an indication, there was someone in the house that she'd been having a glass of wine with. But to be really honest, let's say she had a glass of wine the night before and that sat on the sink and that was red wine, that she'd had and that was still sitting on the sink and hadn't been washed up yet. And the next night she decided to have a glass of white wine and didn't want to use the same glass
of red wine.
or whatever, but didn't want to use the same glass as the night before. And so that when she's washed up both glasses, they've gone on the side of the sink and turned up. I just don't think that is evidence of there being necessarily a second person.
How many times have you left dishes drying in the dish rack?
Every freaking day of my life. There was a really clear, people were very adamant. So clearly there was someone else there, because there was 2 wine glasses. I don't think that indicates necessarily there was 2 people. You can't rule it out, but I definitely don't think that that's an immediate, there were 2 people there.
The other thing that the police noted when they were looking at the house during the investigation on that first day was that there was no sign of an assault within the house.
No.
There was no sign that there was anybody else at the house. Everything was neat and tidy where it should be. The bed was made. There was nothing crazy.
Now,
sorry.
No, keep going, sorry.
I was just going to say the one thing that sort of did make them go, oh, that's a bit strange, is that her keys were in the back of that front door.
Yeah.
So they're like, did she use the keys to unlock a door because someone's knocked on the door, shut it behind her and go outside, and then the assault has taken place? Or did she just always keep her keys in the back of that door and that's just where they stayed?
See, some people do that. I mean, I know I had a lock at a particular house I was at that, a key always stayed in it, on the inside that was just how we locked it and unlocked it internally.
So I don't even know that necessarily says anything.
The other stuff that we need to look at too is that there was lights on in the property at night, and clearly, I mean, this is winter, middle of winter in Ireland. It gets really dark, as particularly out in an area like this, very, very dark. So
there's no street lights, there's no ambient lights,
nothing. So there were lights on at night. However, when they found her body, all the lights in the house were off. So let's say, she had a phone call with her husband at about 11 p.m. Might have been a 2-minute phone call, might have been a half-hour phone call. We don't need to know really. But if she's awake at approximately 11 p.m., it would have been dark as dark, right? So she's gone to bed quite late at night, let's say, or been interrupted at that point, still very dark. If that's when an attack has occurred, there would have been lights on, right? even if something, say, has happened down at the gate and she's exited the house like with it, because she's obviously got her boots on, she's going outside, like she knew she was going outside. She's not just, indoors with her shoes off. She's put her boots on specifically to go outside.
It's worth noting that she didn't wear shoes in the house.
Yeah.
So we know she wouldn't have been wearing her boots inside. Yeah.
So she was heading outside and knew she was heading outside. You would think there'd be still lights on in the house if it was dark for her to return to as she came back, kind of thing as well. So there was no lights on in the house. Her body wasn't found until 10 a.m. So, and sunrise was at 8:40 a.m. So the fact that we don't have a time of death because of the way the body unfortunately was sort of, was weighted until it was left for so long. But I think that we could fairly comfortably say, I think that it's happened after dawn. So we're talking more 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. sort of stuff.
8:30 maybe.
Yeah, because you need some daylight. And not only to not have the lights on, the other thing is that if it was that pitch black, the perpetrator, could they have found those items to have attacked her with?
Well, no, unless they had a torch. But then a torch would have potentially
been a weapon.
Well, that's true too. So why wouldn't you use something that was on
already in your hand, which isn't the case. They didn't. So, I feel like that the time frame, it really pushes it out to morning rather than night.
I agree. I think it's just, I just also said before that her house didn't have electricity. It did have electricity. It just had no heating. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
So
the other thing was, sorry with that.
Go.
So we're heading towards autopsy stuff here.
Yeah.
So in the autopsy, it was found that she had contents in her stomach that appeared to be cereal sort of foods, or that kind of food that had been consumed within the last between 2 to 3 hours prior to her death. So we're not talking but then again, in the way she lived, now thinking of it, maybe that's the sort of thing she would eat for dinner on the odd occasion. Yeah.
Who knows?
Can't rule that out. But in my head, I was like, totally, that's morning food. That's waking and then...
In her house, though, they found a loaf of bread that was actually it was cut and out. So it's not like she'd put it away because it would have gone stale. In no time in that kind of freezing cold weather.
Yeah. To me, she's been interrupted during a breakfast
maybe while
time.
She's eating her breakfast.
Yeah, not going to bed at 11, 12 o'clock at night or, 2 a.m. stuff. It's... Yeah, I think a lot of indication there points to it being morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sophie's family, so firstly, Daniel was notified. Interestingly enough, he sort of stayed put. He was actually at their holiday home in the south of France at the time, which is where they'd intended to spend Christmas.
Which she had every intention of returning for Christmas to France.
Did.
She wasn't staying in Ireland for Christmas.
That's right. Yeah. She was just going there for a few days before Christmas.
Yeah.
She'd even arranged a Christmas present for Daniel that day, the day before, on the 22nd. She'd called a gardener to come in and plant a tree outside their window at their property in the south of France, and that was going to be his Christmas present. Okay. So she had lots of plans that she was sort of,
he was
looking forward
15,
to. 16 years older than her.
Yeah.
16 years older.
Oh, sorry, Daniel,
her
husband.
Sorry,
I'm talking about her son. Sorry,
Pierre-Louis. No, that was my fault because I bloody
that's what's
did that at the start. Sorry. So this is her husband.
Okay, that's a thoughtful gift. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
Pierre-Louis was actually with his biological dad at the time and was spending Christmas with him. So the way he describes how he found out about his mum's passing is absolutely devastating. This poor little boy, he found out via his dad, apparently in the middle of the night. He was in his bedroom and his dad came in to let him know that his mum had passed away. So Pierre-Louis does say that he was really shielded from everything. He never had to speak to the Irish Guards. He was never interviewed by French police.
Yeah.
There was nothing. He was really removed from all of it, and thank God.
But a level of that too is a bit of a lack of the investigation too, because he could have had knowledge of, he was the person who actually went with her the most to Ireland and stayed there. So he wasn't interviewed at all. Now, he might have been able to give some sort of mum regularly saw this person or had an argument with that person the last time we were here, or, those sorts of bits of information were not collected at that time. So I get what you're saying. Absolutely, as a 15-year-old kid, you know, to have him protected and shielded from all of that is great. But on an investigation level, I think there was some information that may have, who knows, may have been missed.
But also at that age, potentially you're right, he would have had information that might have been useful.
Yeah.
So Daniel, her husband, finds out and stays put at their home. That is a heavily criticised decision by lots of different people. And one of Sophie's friends is interviewed for the Netflix documentary. And in that, she says she actually went to see Daniel not long after Sophie's death. And he was devastated. So by the sounds of what she was saying, he was probably almost paralyzed by and wasn't able to go there. Sophie's mum, dad and brother, Bertrand, I'm not sure whether Stefan went or not, but they immediately jumped on the next plane, I think on the 24th, over to see Sophie and identify her body.
I mean, everyone's reactions can be so different. And
I don't think we can judge that. Although for me, I couldn't stay away personally. No. Like I just couldn't.
There would be nothing that would stop me getting there.
Same.
As much as what do you do? What can you do?
Her body needed to be identified. There'd be arrangements that needed to be made, but also I would have to know everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But then I also understand there are people for whom that is not what they would want. Yeah. And I assume for Daniel, that's not how he wanted to remember Sophie. Yeah,
but it gets taken just as a flat out, like, well, he's guilty then.
Yeah, then what's going on? Why? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which, if people are just different, you can't judge them on their reactions. There's got to be more to it than that to be able to go, oh, he's guilty. Like,
for sure. Yeah. So Sophie's body, originally Bertrand said that he was going to try and identify the body, and he went to the morgue and her body was unveiled to him, and he said, I can't tell you whether this is my sister or not, because she was so badly mutilated.
That's full on to me. I feel like you could, that's how badly her body must have been attacked.
Yeah. You couldn't recognise her. Her mum and dad, I think, then went to view the body, and I guess they used different markings on her to sort of confirm that it was her. Her mum, though, said, I think they had to cut her hair in order to get her out of the barbed wire. Yeah. And her mum said, as soon as I saw her haircut, I was like, nope, that's not Sophie. It can't be her because her long blonde hair.
You'd clutch at anything that it wasn't your daughter.
It's just so true. I can't imagine as a parent having to do that.
Oh, God, no.
That is just...
No one should ever have to do that.
No one should ever have to. No way. Oh, I can't even. I just can't even.
No.
So just really quickly, in the lead up to this, and this was a fairly impromptu visit for Sophie to Ireland. She just had a few days spare, decided to head up there. She tried to get lots of different people to go with her.
Yeah, she did. And interesting, they all said that that wasn't normal. Quite often she'd want to go by herself. That it wasn't
for some reason, or was it because it was coming up for Christmas and she wanted the company this time? But she tried Daniel, she tried her friend, she tried her auntie, her mum.
Yep.
And everyone was like, no, everyone's busy. It's 3 or 4 days before, because I think she arrived on the 19th or 20th of December.
20th.
Yeah. So, there's no way I could just pick up and go if I was, we've got so much to do in those last few days.
But her auntie was like, she would have gone with her, no question. But she just happened to fall ill, really ill, not just got a cold.
Yeah.
Really bad flu or something. Yeah. And so she didn't go. But it's so sad that thought that, this was the one time was there something playing on her mind that she wanted someone, wasn't feeling overly safe and wanted another person with her, or so was there another reason for that?
I mean, she often did take people with her, but then also often went on her own. But I think the narrative is that when she went with other people, it was like, come if you want. But this time she was quite insistent on people coming. Why?
That is curious to me.
Me too.
Yeah.
In the investigation of this crime, the police were able to see CCTV footage of her arriving at Cork Airport and arriving wherever the airport is closest to Cork anyway.
Yeah.
And nothing seemed out of kilter there. She was, she had her luggage and she got into got the hire car, and which is what she always did, and there was nothing unusual in that respect.
Yeah.
The night before she died, the day before she died, she'd actually gone on this walk to Three Castle Head. And this was, oh my God, absolutely stunning. It's like almost out of a storybook. Yeah. It is so beautiful, out of a fairy tale.
Yeah.
She'd gone on a walk.
Is that the castle that's like haunted and
yes,
stuff too?
Supposedly.
Yeah.
And apparently there's this folklore of a white woman, and if you see the white woman, then death is imminent upon you. Yeah. And so people are like, she must have seen the white woman when she went up to Three Castle Head, and whatever. Whether or not that's true, I don't know.
Yeah.
After that, she actually went to O'Sullivan's pub, which is the local pub in Skull, and had some tea and just chatted with the locals. And by this stage, it was really starting to get dark, because I think, does it get dark about 4 p.m. or something? Yeah,
it gets dark really early. And then sun rises at that particular time of year.
It's really short days.
It's really short days, yeah, because it's quite north,
Yeah. So just really quickly, I wrote a few facts down about Skull, because it is a really small town, and it is kind of in the middle of nowhere. So Irish, very Catholic, everyone goes to mass. That's where you find out all the goss.
Oh, yeah.
So on Christmas Day, so this is now 2 days, I guess, after Sophie's death, everyone's at mass, everyone's speculating about what's happened. There's so much chitter-chatter about it.
Yeah.
After mass, everyone goes on a Christmas swim. They all go into the ocean, freezing cold ocean, and go for a swim at midday on Christmas Day.
That's why these people live so long. Tell you that. Yeah.
I mean, it is cold water therapy. They bloody knew about it back in or before 1996.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what the locals were saying, though, was on this particular Christmas Day, where there was always a sense of community and a sense of openness, that no longer existed. And so people would, this was the kind of town where you wouldn't lock your doors, and you would just leave your car open when you went into the shops. And
well, I think they said to be a local, though, you had to have a family history of living in the area for 100 years.
Yeah. And there are those people.
There were people that's legit who lived there. It was either to the extreme of you had generation after generation after generation living in there, or you were a Sophie. Yeah. What they called a blow-in.
A blow-in. Yeah.
I love that. I love that term. That, came and went, and from other parts of the world. But it became like this town a little bit, I guess, early days Byron Bay kind of esque.
That's the feeling of it, isn't it?
Yeah, really alternative kind of people potentially living there. There was
a lot of artists
and things. A lot of there was the gay and lesbian community that were living there. There was pockets of all sort of just a little bit left
eccentric,
of centre kind of people that have gathered here, and it sounded like the most quaint place to live,
but also very welcoming and accepting. Nobody was judged for who they were or what they were doing.
It wasn't like, oh, you're a tourist, that you're a blow-in, that that we don't want to talk to you or anything like that. Those people were definitely brought into the community and welcomed in. So it sounded like a great place to live. But there was sort of a bit of a the groups that did exist though too. Like there was sort of you were either part of the art group or part of the other group, kind of thing. They communicated, we don't talk to them, but there was little pockets.
I mean, that happens. That's human nature, isn't it? You're attracted to the people who like the same things that you do. But they'd all meet down at the pub on a Friday, Saturday, and
brought us all in
Monday night.
Have a Guinness, absolutely.
That's it. So at this Christmas Day ocean swim that they would all get into, people were talking about starting to lock doors again and being really concerned.
It would have absolutely shook the town
that there was a murderer among them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really sort of changed the vibe and the feeling of the town.
Yeah.
At this event, the police attended, and they sort of put a very casual appeal out to anybody who'd seen anything to come forward, because we're 2 days, so Christmas Day, 25th of December, obviously, we're a couple of days down the track, and they have nothing to go on.
No.
They've got no idea what's happened. They haven't even got any leads really.
No.
So
Where do you even start?
Where do you start?
But yeah, they did question like people in the town, obviously, who saw her that evening and the days prior, and they opened up a hotline kind of thing for people to ring in and give any tips. And they were able to place her where she'd been over her days that she prior to being to the murder, which was all very normal stuff, like, just suggesting what she was doing. But there was one particular phone call they got, which was from a payphone, so they weren't able to trace who this person was. And when they left the information, they only gave their name as Fiona. And the information that she gave was that she had seen a man acting oddly at a particular bridge, which I can't say the name. Good work.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. On a particular bridge that was just down the road from Sophie's property. So she had seen him on that evening acting oddly, and it was a man in a long coat, tall, which met some of the criteria they were looking for in terms of the car situation. A man big enough to have lifted a 23-kilo block, sort of stuff. And so
he was wearing a black beret
and a long black coat. Mm-hmm. And so this information was really all they had at the time of like someone being in the area. So they tried to contact this, wanted to get back in touch with this woman, and she did ring a second time, I think, and give a bit more information, but again only said her name was Fiona.
So what happened was she had that first phone call, but the police didn't get her number.
No, they got nothing
from it. They got no other details.
Which you're entitled to do and give information anonymously.
They actually traced the call, realised it came from a phone box. So what the police superintendent did was go on the local TV news and made an appeal and said, look, we've had this information from this person. That they didn't name
more
her,
information,
but we need more information. So if that person can please contact us. This Fiona saw that, but waited until the next morning to call the police back.
Well, because she really didn't want to be public of who she was.
She also had to find her way to a phone box again because the second phone call she made was from a phone box, gave a little bit more information. But then decided there was actually more information that she needed to give, and this time she mistakenly, I suppose, made the third phone call from her house. And what the police found when they traced that call is that it came from the home of a woman named Marie Farrell. So Marie, what do you think of her?
I don't know. I'm so I go back and forth.
I feel like... So we'll get to this in a second. Marie made a statement that basically what Meg had just said, that she saw this man on Kilfata Bridge and they said to her, do you know who he is? And who did she say?
Well, first of all, she said no.
Sorry. Yes,
she said no. Sorry. And then she rang back again and said she'd been down at the supermarket and happened to see this man again in the supermarket wearing the black long coat. And in the supermarket, in the local town, she's where she is, she's like, that's that guy. Who is that? And apparently in the supermarket, someone said, oh, that's Ian Bailey. Mm-hmm. And so she was able to go back. She had heard this name, but didn't know this man. Mm-hmm. She'd heard that name mentioned around town, but didn't marry up. Oh, that is that person until this person said the name. Yep. So then she's apparently gone back home and rung the police again and said, I've found the name for you. His name is Ian Bailey. So that put the cops to go and go, okay, we need to go and look at this Ian Bailey. Now, Ian Bailey is a very interesting person. He was living in West Cork, in the area. He had lived there for, I think, 11 years, I want to say.
So he was an Englishman.
Yes.
And he decided to move, so because he was a poet, a self-described poet, his poetry's fucking shit.
And the locals had been had to sit through all that at the pub every now and then because he was a bit of a drunk.
He'd do it at the deli when he was going to get cold meats, and he'd be...
Doesn't surprise me.
Oh, well, no, it doesn't, does it?
No.
So he was a journalist by trade.
Yes.
And, he just asked him who was anything you wanted him to be.
Yes.
A really great one at that.
Mm-hmm.
He moved to Skull in West Cork because he said he was sort of looking for a community of like-minded people. And I guess
so he separated from his first wife, and that was when he moved there. Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit of a, what was he running away from him kind of situation that there was. I think there was some fairly dodgy stuff that the breakup of the marriage was for a damn good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was abusive towards his first wife.
And we don't know much about that, to be honest. The police never interviewed her or anything, which I think getting a backstory of who he was beyond the current partner that he was with at that time, which he was abusive to, which is absolute evidence of. To know then what the first marriage was like, I think would give even more understanding of who he was as a person.
Context, yeah.
Yeah.
He was living in like a little apartment or something, or a little unit type of thing, cottage, when he first moved to Cork. But then he met a lady by the name of, oh my God.
She went by Jules.
Jules, thank you.
That wasn't her full name, but yeah.
Jules had 2 daughters, and she lived in a really lovely looking, again, very quaint cottage that also had like a guest house. A studio type thing. And she was an artist, and she was actually a very good artist. And she met Ian and they got a bit friendly, and he was kind of looking for somewhere more permanent to live. So he actually rented out her studio initially. And then, as he says, you know, one thing led to another, and then we were a couple. And so he's weaseled his way into the main house.
Well, they ended up being together for like 25 plus years.
A long time.
But
a very long time.
Yeah. A number of occasions where, though, she was hospitalised due to abuse that he inflicted upon her.
There's a really horrible story and it was a neighbour who told it. Oh, this got me in the in the Netflix documentary. But he came to a knock at the door, and it was one of Jules's daughters saying, I need your help, Mum's, like, something's happened to Mum. Oh. He goes up to the house and finds that Jules had basically been beaten to within an inch of her life. Her eye was out of its socket. That's how bad this beating was. And this poor man, the neighbour, says to this day, the little girl was kind of looking at him saying, help me. And he's like, I don't even know what to do in this situation. I mean, obviously he assisted Jules in getting medical attention, but, you know, I guess it was up to the police to do anything further, and it just never went anywhere.
Nope.
Oh, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrific.
So clearly, like, Ian Bailey is a violent man. We can categorically say that.
You know what he says about that assault, though?
Yeah.
He basically said that he's like, well, she was drinking and I was drinking, and then she pushed me, so I shoved her back. No, you didn't shove her back. You don't fucking lose an eye out of its eye socket from a shove.
No.
You beat the shit out of her.
He also said something along the lines of, you know, we've been together for a long time. Like, the longer you're together, we were together longer than most marriages. Of course there was some, you know, like, conflict between us.
Oh, like, physical conflict is normal?
The longer you're married to someone, the more likely you are to beat them to death, practically.
Oh, fuck
That's
off.
fucked up.
He is so fucked up.
Ugh.
He is a piece of shit.
100%. Whatever, in relation to this case we're talking about, he is a absolute piece of shit. Yep. And a fucking weirdo.
Oh, he's so weird, and he's so full of himself. He's got such an inflated sense of self.
Yes.
He just thinks he is amazing, and he's such an incredible poet and an incredible writer, and everyone wants to listen to him. No one gave a flying fuck about him. He was just...
I think one way to sum up. So this was in a court document, not just this isn't just random sort of stuff. This is a court document by a psychiatrist, right?
Ooh, this will be good.
Report was prepared for a trial that occurred, which we'll get to.
Yep.
So it was written: personality constructed on narcissism, psycho-rigidity, violence, impulsiveness, egocentricity, with an intolerance to frustration and a great need for recognition. Under the liberating effects of alcohol, he had the tendency to become violent.
That is...
Mr. Bailey is a man who likes a certain amount of notoriety, that he likes perhaps to be in the limelight, that he likes a bit of self-publicity.
Yep. A bit.
Yeah. An absolute giant piece of shit.
He really
And
is.
that psychiatrist hit the nail on the head, I think, with all that being said about him.
Yep.
Yeah. So when this occurred, obviously living in the area, he was like, journalism, like, you know, he was like, I'll jump on this story. He wrote 6 articles, I believe, by the new year. Or was it
by Christmas.
By Christmas?
It was within 2 days.
I was going to say Christmas and then went,
it was by Christmas.
By Christmas. So we're talking like
2 days.
2 days.
Yeah.
He'd written 6 articles on this case. Now, there is...
Full of conjecture.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that was put in that, and there's photographs of him like being like in that crime scene, basically like walking in and taking photos through windows of the house, and he was more than just like getting himself involved in this situation. It was a whole nother level of him taking liberty in this, but there was stuff in those articles that was stuff he probably shouldn't have known about the case, and whether
even the first news article that he wrote.
Yeah.
Right. So he was a freelance journalist, but he used to write a lot of articles for an English newspaper.
Yeah.
And an Irish newspaper, actually. But one of the editors from an English newspaper contacted him and said, we're getting reports that there's a foreign national deceased somewhere near you.
Yeah.
Basically, can you go and find out some more information, see what you get? He then I think it was within 45 minutes or something.
It's crazy. Like at 10:45 a.m. sort of stuff. Not like, her body's found at 10 and then by 11 a.m. he had written this.
He'd written an article that said she was French, which the police didn't even know at that point.
They couldn't identify her.
And also the name of the person that they had who owned that house was Sophie Bugnol, which was her maiden name. It wasn't her married name. So that's why it took them so long, because they didn't actually contact Danielle Toscan du Plantier until that night, because they didn't know she was that person,
was the same person.
that was her.
Yes. Yeah. And so in the town, she was known by her maiden name.
By her maiden name. Everyone knew her as
because
Bugnol.
When she went there, she wasn't wanting people to go, oh, you're married to the well-known director, or
That's
and
right.
you're a
She
producer.
wanted
Like
anonymity.
No, anonymity is why she went there. So she did use her maiden name just to completely have that. But
But he also reported. No, he didn't report her name.
No, he didn't report her name at that point. But,
No.
Yeah, but he did say she was French. And
how the fuck did he know that?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because according to him, they never met too.
No, so he said, I'd seen her once.
Yeah.
But I'd never met her. And he repeated that, oh my God, ad nauseum in every interview he ever did about her.
Whereas the neighbour, Elfie, also, who was one of the people who found her body, he says he introduced them.
He's adamant they had at least had a conversation.
But does he have motive to say that?
Well, that's an interesting take, but I've got a very firm view on what I think happened. So, okay, the day that Bailey's released this, 45 minutes later, released this article, fuck only knows how that happened. Oh, the other interesting thing is, so he found out that there was a dead body. He goes to the scene and finds it straight away, which
he knew exactly how to get there.
He knew exactly where he was going. Yeah. No one else knew. Even the police didn't know when they were told. They were like, it took them ages to find it. And they're police for that area.
Yes. Yeah.
He stayed there for only a matter of minutes. And there's photographic evidence of this because the police were actually taking crime scene photo, like the local police were actually, to their credit, trying to take photos of anything. So there's actually photographic evidence of him pulling up. Minutes later, his car's gone.
Yeah.
So he's found out that there's a deceased body. He's found it immediately. He's gone there for 2 to 3 minutes and then been able to produce this entire article that 45 minutes later for release.
Yeah, the Garda said that he did ask a few questions. Like, as a journalist, he asked a few questions, but not many, and they were odd questions to ask. I don't know what they were, but the words were that they were quite odd questions. They weren't the questions that would have gotten him the answers for writing the article. Put it that way. They didn't marry up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The police noted, so this is once the homicide detectives arrived, the police noted that this probably wasn't a professional hit, and the fact that it looked like a crime of opportunity by the fact that the murder weapon, which was pretty obvious, was what it was. So they're sort of thinking like, well, then how did this situation unfold? Like, what has happened to escalate to this point?
Absolutely. So by January 1997, they do arrest Ian Bailey for the murder. However, they do not... February it was. February, not January. February 10th, 1997. They arrest Ian, but they release him without charge.
So in Ireland, there's a law that states that you can only ever hold somebody for 2 12-hour periods before either charging them or releasing them. So they had to be very strategic in how they were going to go about this.
Yeah.
So I guess by Feb, they thought they had enough to question him on.
Yeah.
And so they've held him for that 12 hours and then had to release him because they didn't actually have enough, or the DPP, the
Director of Public Prosecutions
decided that there wasn't enough in what he'd told them in that 12 hours and the evidence that they'd gathered to that point to actually charge him with anything.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's just also worth noting as well that there were certain injuries on Ian that were noted.
Yes.
So there were cuts and scratches to his hands and forearms. He says that he got those because he climbed a tree to cut off a Christmas tree, like cut the top of it, a pine tree, cut the top off it to make a Christmas tree because Christmas trees are really expensive to buy. So he was being frugal and fiscally responsible and cutting down his own Christmas tree. But what is, I guess, suggested is that the kinds of scratches on his arms could not have happened just from necessarily climbing a pine tree and cutting it down.
Unfortunately, though, too, they didn't take photos of those injuries.
They
did a drawing, which is not, apparently, according to like people in the know of this stuff, that during that time, that wasn't unusual that would happen.
But they had a camera.
Yeah. However, probably around, probably earlier to this, like in earlier days, yes, that's probably how they would have done it. But they were really in a time of photographs could have been taken and unfortunately weren't.
Well, they were photographing other things in the scene. Like, it just blows my mind.
It blows my mind that you wouldn't document that more carefully.
You can see it's like the tracing of a hand and then just like these
lines
lines on it. So it wouldn't have even been accurate to what was actually on his hand.
So in terms of this not being, now being cold case, basically in terms of looking back at it, trying to solve it, those injuries don't help us, to kind of like look at it and go
one way or the other.
No, it doesn't. We can't rule it out, and you can't say, oh, well, they look more like something that could be done this way. So that evidence, unfortunately, has gone with time as to whether or not that is an indication. The other injury he had was on his forehead, which was a cut on his forehead, which he reckons was because he was getting a turkey for Christmas.
He was killing turkeys. Now, to his credit, he did sell some turkeys to the local butcher that he had killed, some of his own turkeys. But, sorry, like, what? Like, how's a turkey injuring like a little cut on the top? Oh, is that what he said it was? A peck?
Yeah,
my God.
Yeah, the turkey beak had got him. But, I mean, to be honest, if a turkey's done that to you, I mean, I don't know. I reckon there's many. You'd have more than one, and there'd be scratches from their legs or something. I don't know,
it makes no sense. Nothing he says makes sense.
Yeah, it does. This is it. But at the same time, I don't know what to believe about him because I think he loved the attention.
He loved it. He absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And I think people in the town were really quite scared of him. The people who knew him, because he was so powerful. He was so aggressive. He was huge. He was 6'4", I think. Yeah. Really tall and very broad. He wasn't a skinny 6'4".
No. A complete and utter loose cannon.
Totally. He's such an inflated sense of self. Yeah. And apparently as soon as he got drunk, I mean, what that psychologist has reported is absolutely true. People said he'd get drunk in the pub and he was just horrible.
Yeah.
It would clear the pub out because he was just so awful.
Why go? Oh, you don't want to be anywhere near
him. Yeah. I mean, to clear a pub out in Ireland, that's an effort. It's an effort and a half.
Need your warm beer from somewhere. I can't go a whole episode without commenting on that. It's got to be cold, people.
But Guinness you serve cold, right?
No, Guinness is warm.
So people around town say that when Bailey would get into these drunken stupors, that he would confess to the crime. So this is in the years following Sophie's death. And he'd say things like, I did it, I went too far. And then he'd sing it, or he'd write, or he'd, I guess make up a poem on the spot, which, he was so bad at anyway. But he would sort of draw attention to himself while saying these things. It's really weird.
Yes.
It's really, really strange. But the police or the Garda arrested Bailey again a year later. So now, keeping in mind, this is the second time they've arrested him and the second time they're allowed to. After this, they are no longer allowed to arrest him unless they've got new and compelling evidence.
Yeah.
So they've arrested him a second time a year later, almost a year later, in the January. hoping that they can push him because they've what they think, I guess, is they've gathered a lot of circumstantial evidence.
All circumstantial. Yeah, they've got nothing concrete, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah.
And they were kind of hoping, given that, they'd had all of these reports of a confession and that kind of thing through multiple different townspeople.
There turned out to be 11 people in the end who supposedly Bailey confessed to in some way, whether that be in a drunken stupor at the pub or whatever. But yeah, supposedly 11 people did have statements saying that he'd confessed to it. Yep.
And so, again, after this arrest, 12 hours later, he comes out and his lawyer, who's also smug as fuck. That man, the look of him repulses me, that lawyer.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. I didn't even write down his name because he's a piece of shit too.
Doesn't need any
he doesn't need a
notoriety.
name. So he was released again because, again, the DPP said there was just not enough to charge him after that interview.
Yep.
It's just devastating. Jules was interviewed as well and arrested. I think that was the first time Bailey was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
They arrested Jules about a few hours later.
Yep.
In connection with the murder because I think they thought she might have known something. She, at the time, was adamant he hadn't done anything. A couple of years later, she is quoted as saying, "I actually don't know if he did it." So in her first in her first statement, what Jules says is that night they'd been out. They'd been at a pub they'd been at a house party and then they went to a pub. Mm-hmm. And so Ian was inebriated, but so was she. And I think they were driving.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And so anyway, at the end of the night, they go home, they have a nightcap, have a whiskey each, and they go to bed. Mm-hmm. Initially, Jules said, "Yep, he was with me all night."
Adamantly, he didn't move. 100% he was in the bed all night. Yep.
She later changed her statement to say that he actually didn't settle and was sort of tossing and turning, and about an hour after they went to bed, he got up. Let that sink in.
The other one that she said to later on was that she awoke to him bringing her coffee. So he was up well before her. And that
was at about 10 a.m.
Yeah, that he brought her a coffee. Yeah. So, yeah, that he was already awake well before her. And also that originally, because she said he was in bed all night, but then she said that, oh no, he'd written an article. And at one stage he'd written that article in the cottage, and been in the house where she knew where he was, that he hadn't left the house.
Yes.
Another time her statement was that no, he had written that at the studio, which was about, from memory, like 300 metres down the road.
Yes, it was.
So a distance. So
I think it was like a mile, however long that is.
Well, a mile would be about that.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not good at that stuff. How long's a mile? How far's a mile? Yeah, 250 metres-ish. Is that right?
I'm looking it up.
1.6 metres is 1.6 k is a mile.
Oh, a mile is 1.6 kilometres.
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound right.
No, I know
does
it wasn't that. I think it was about 300 metres.
Yeah, that 300 metres sounds right.
I have
Sorry.
maps and I'll put them all up and you can see how far away it was. Far enough away that if he was going down to the studio, like he could have been anywhere. You wouldn't have necessarily been at the studio. If you get out of the house to the point where you were down there, you could have been anywhere. And there was also it's worth mentioning, it was like 2 to 3 kilometres from their cottage to Sophie's, a walkable distance, really.
Yes.
I mean, pretty rocky, hilly area, but not it's doable completely.
Now, Murray saw this man who she later thought was Ian Bailey at the Kilfudder Bridge, and that was at like 3:30 in the morning.
Yes, but she also withdrew her statement.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Now this gets me.
Yeah.
This is why I was asking you about her before.
Yeah.
There's interviews of her when she's made her first statement, and she is adamant and I think credible. You can tell she's a reluctant witness.
Yes.
She doesn't want to
But her reasoning for that was that she was out with an ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, her first ever boyfriend, like a young love.
She's married and everything, but she was out with someone
She's having an affair.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why she wanted to stay anonymous at the time. So that and to me that marries up. You're not wanting to
of course
put that up there, and so you've kept anonymous and you don't really want to be part of this kind of thing, but you do have information that is pertinent to this potentially. So you've got to come forward.
She also has, so after she's made this statement, and obviously we now know who she is, she's made public statements. She's been on the news telling her story. She was on like a sort of a current affair type program being interviewed and telling the interviewer exactly what she'd seen. She then has made, I can't remember how many times, but it was multiple times, she made complaints to the Garda about Ian Bailey tormenting her. He would show up at her shop. She had a shop in Skull, and he would show up and threaten her. He would threaten her family. He would stalk her.
Yeah.
So basically he'd follow her and just be really menacing, and he would basically say to her, you need to withdraw your statement. You don't know what you saw. And there are multiple witnesses to this. I mean, the Garda have all of the statements following that. And then, less than 12 months later, she withdraws her statement. And then she's interviewed again. And I just think I see the fear in her face. Like in that first interview, once she'd made her original statement, I found her so credible and so, I could tell in her face she didn't want to be that person, but she had to be because there was a woman's life, and the consequences of that hanging in the balance. But then when I see her interviewed where she's like, nope, I made false statements, she's so broken.
Yeah.
And such a diminished version of what she was beforehand. And I'm like, this fucking asshole has tormented her so badly.
Yeah.
That
she feels like she's got no other option but to back out of this and be like, ugh, which annoys me because all you can do is say what you saw. That doesn't, that's not saying that she's saying he murdered her.
Yeah.
It's just saying I saw this person. You now sort that out.
But
mate. That's
put him in the
on me.
vicinity of her house at the time, But that's what I'm saying.
And the thing is, him being on that bridge doesn't mean that he murdered her either. It just means there was a person in the area that should be questioned and asked what they saw.
Yeah.
It's just a trail of that. And so she's done nothing wrong.
Oh, no. But obviously he thinks that information is dangerous to him.
That or this is the thing with him. I just feel like he just loves the attention and the bullshit that goes with it all too.
Are you saying you don't think he did it?
I don't know.
We'll get to that in a sec. Where are we up to?
2002, there was actually a review put in place under the investigation because of the murder investigation because there was some criticism around how the Garda went about this.
Yeah.
There was, Ian Bailey had issue with how they had gone about it, but so did other people within the force too because things weren't done as they probably should have been, unfortunately. And whether that literally just come down to the fact of inexperience, but there was criticism that potentially they were focusing on Ian Bailey and maybe not looking elsewhere when they should have been, potentially. So a lot of questions went into that. So a review took place in January 2002 of that. In December of 2003 and then all the way through to January 2004, Ian Bailey took civil action against 7 newspapers for their coverage of the murder investigation. So this man went to town with all of his legal action. So he lost 5 of those actions, but 2 of them he did win. He won a total of €4,000 from each of them, one being the Irish Sun and the other being the Irish Daily Mirror, who had claimed that he had assaulted his former partner. Fact. But anyway, he won that. But the other 5 he lost.
I think the reason he won that is because it had no bearing on the current case. I think it was more that they used that as a motive or as a reason. But I mean,
he also hadn't been convicted of those things.
That's
so I don't think it. So as much as it's defamation because we're only going by someone's story, not going by court, actual fact in that scenario. So unfortunately, yeah, he did win those 2 cases, but the other 5 were dropped because they did report facts that that we knew. But that was not where he left all his court actions. So he was. But the thing is, relentless.
This actually became like a mini murder trial because they had all of the same witnesses. Like it actually became detrimental to him because there were witnesses that contradicted almost everything that he was saying.
Yeah.
And so in the court of public opinion, which I know that's not what the purpose of this was, the purpose for him was, I think he thought he'd be able to win all of these actions and be like, oh, sweet, see, you are all idiots. You don't know what you're talking about, and it would clear his name. Actually, in fact, the opposite happened.
Yeah.
And he just showed the world even more of who he was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, as I say, no matter whether he did this or not, he's a dick.
Oh, such a fucking dick.
Oh, man. So I don't know if we want to go back a little bit here. We're kind of at a point where we're not really getting anywhere in this investigation. You know, like there's a real stalemate in terms of where we're at. So I don't know if we're going to go back and just like go, okay, so the Garda were looking at Ian Bailey fairly solely. They did have other suspects on their list. So do we want to go over those?
Yeah, do you want to just touch
go
on
back
them?
over those?
Yeah.
All right. So first and foremost, there was an ex-partner of Sophie's. She did have, I guess, a bit of an affair, but
it wasn't a affair.
Yeah. But she did separate from her husband at the time. So she met this man, and they did separate for about 12 months, I think, and she had this relationship.
I think there was a little bit of crossover.
Yeah, I believe there was some crossover, but
to be
ended
fair,
up
Daniel had affairs too.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know, but they did end up getting back together, Daniel. But so when she was murdered, they were a married couple, etc. But there was a break in the marriage in terms of a separation.
Yes.
So this man's name was Bruno Carbonet, another French man. He was an artist. He was very infatuated with Sophie, but he was an interesting bloke.
Very
too,
interesting
though.
bloke.
Yeah.
She had taken him to the house in Skull, and they'd spent, you know, he'd been there once, I think. So he knew the house, and he'd, you know, spent a little bit of time there. Sophie, I think, wasn't that into him. Honestly, like physically, I do not understand
either
the
of
attraction.
them,
Well, yeah, but especially this Carbonet guy, because
he looked, I don't know,
very old.
Yeah, yes. But
Very
you know what?
old.
And one of the, I think it was one of the, might have been the Netflix documentary, they described him as a man of a similar age of hers. And I'm looking at the two of them going, no, there's no way he's a similar age to her.
No.
There was a definite massive age gap, like a decent age gap. I would say 20 years.
That's what I would have thought as well.
So I found that really interesting, the way that was portrayed, because I don't know, I saw him and just went,
oh, no.
Doesn't marry up. They don't, to me, they don't even look like they would be a couple.
Same. I thought the same thing.
So it was a 3-year relationship she had with him, and that she ended it in 1993.
3 years. So then there was definitely overlap in her marriage.
Yes,
then.
there was. But I think for at least 12 months, a minimum year, her and Daniel were separated.
Okay.
Because of what was going on here. And she did the right thing, I guess, in that, you know, like, okay, clearly, like, I'm doing this. I really need to probably separate my marriage, like, kind of thing. But she ended it. It didn't end well. Bruno was not okay with the end of their relationship. He stalked her. He
cut up paintings that he'd painted when he was with her and posted them to her.
Yeah.
Like in little pieces.
Yeah. A bit odd.
Very strange.
So in January 97, like, he appeared on the Garda's radar in terms of someone that, like, people in the area were saying there was a man that she did bring here, and, you know, and people knew that it wasn't a great relationship. So they went and interviewed him. They actually went over to France and interviewed him, and he was found to have a very concrete alibi. So he was ruled out. However, could they have done more to look into that in terms of extenuating things, of like, did he get someone else to do this? That wasn't investigated. That was found in the reviews, that there was potentially more there that could have been looked at.
So they investigated that aspect from Daniel's perspective.
Yes.
Because they know 100% Daniel wasn't in Ireland. Again, he had a really solid alibi. He was in the south of France. Their housekeeper saw him. Like, a lot of people saw him.
Yeah, yeah.
But they definitely looked into the fact that maybe he'd organised a hit on her, although from what everyone was saying at that time, their relationship was actually really well and truly on track.
Yeah.
Obviously, Sophie had organised this plant to be planted in their, you know, in their holiday home for Christmas. So things seemed to be very amicable within their relationship at the time.
Yeah.
And that sort of led nowhere either, really.
No, didn't seem to be anything in there.
Yeah.
There was another guy, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head now, and he was investigated but ruled out pretty quickly too. But the other one that I kind of put on my radar more, and so I'll focus on that one, is Elfie Lyons, the next door neighbour. So Elfie and Sophie had a number of disagreements since that she had owned the property. One being specifically, which was there was a building just not far from Sophie's house, which was called like the storeroom. And Sophie believed that was part of her property. turns out it wasn't. It was Elfie's property. So there was quite a disagreement over that previously. There was a number of other things that they had run-ins over as well. So there's that. But so the morning of the murder, Shirley woke up at about 8:20, and as we said, sunrise was 8:40. She had not been out of the house prior to this, that when she found Sophie's body. That was the first time that she'd exited the house. Elfie was up before her, and he actually had been up earlier in the morning, but had come back to bed. After being up and doing things, he came back to bed. So she believed he was maybe up for at least an hour within the house, that she could hear him prior to 8:20. He, as I said, came back to bed at about 8:20ish, sort of thing, bringing a cup of tea for her who was rising. And she believed he was also up a few times throughout the night as well.
That wasn't uncommon though.
No, he goes to the toilet, etc. like that, but he was up and down throughout the night.
Yeah.
Elfie had a bandaged hand during interviews at the time. I never really got any idea of why if he was ever even asked as to what that injury was.
There was no explanation.
There's no explanation for that whatsoever. So Elfie, at the time of discovering the body, as we said, went back up to the house and checked Sophie's property. We don't know, as we said, about whether or not this murder occurred at the gate, solely, or whether there was anything that happened at the house first and then brought it to the gate, or what happened, because, as we say, there was blood on that door.
Or even how Sophie's blood got there.
How did Sophie's blood get there? Now, the other thing is worth mentioning is that the way you would approach Sophie's house and go from Sophie's house to Elfie's house is that you would go around past this door that you wouldn't see from entering the property. Mm-hmm. So someone who knows the property would have been at that door. Mm-hmm. Someone who didn't know the property would not have even gone anywhere near that door. So there's a possibility that this has occurred out the gate, this interaction, whatever's happened. And let's say if it is Elfie that it has happened with, he's then maybe gone back to the house to check something on his way past as he's gone back home, which has then had some blood on him from which the person would have definitely had blood splatter on them from that situation. And then that's how that smidge of blood is on the door. So that's a possibility that he could have come past and done that as I don't know, gone past and checked inside and then and closed the door and gone back around to his house. Mm-hmm. So that would absolutely make sense that would be a passing by of that door to go back home after that incident. So he hasn't really been looked at very closely, to be honest, and to me doesn't have a clear alibi.
No, he was interviewed, but more so as a witness, not as a suspect.
Absolutely. Now, the other part of this is that Elfie was a cannabis grower in the area, well-known cannabis grower in the area, and supplied a number of people, including some police officers. So is that why he wasn't heavily interviewed? I don't know. Could they have found another cannabis grower if he was put in jail?
Because I looked at, that's right. I think he wasn't the only one.
The only one. I'm not going to say that. But yeah, so I don't know. To me, there's some question marks over him that haven't been looked at close enough.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about the blood on the outside of Sophie's house, that certainly piques my interest and I think should have been investigated more thoroughly and wasn't. The other thing that gets me, though, is that in terms of exhibits taken from the crime scene, so you mentioned the gate, right?
Yeah.
There was so much blood on that gate and likely blood from the perpetrator, because the perpetrator would have had cuts on their hands from this barbed wire and bramble.
Yes.
That gate, which was removed and taken for forensics, was lost. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Never been found again. No. Nobody knows where this gate is. I don't know.
And it's not a little gate.
It's a big farm gate.
Like a 6-foot long gate.
Yes.
Like bigger than that potentially. Like it's a 14-foot gate.
Yes, it's massive. And so I just think so much evidence has been lost to either rule out or, put in the frame certain people, and Elfie is one of those people.
Yeah.
So how did that get lost? Where did it go? Who the fuck knows? But I think there's so much evidence that could have been collected and wasn't, or has been since lost. We're just never going to find those answers.
No. And like I was saying before, like when we sort of hinted at the fact of like that Ian Bailey says he never met Sophie, was never, introduced to her, whereas Elfie swears he was the one who introduced them.
Yeah,
right?
so but it's Elfie, but then there's
and then I kind of go,
people.
well, was he happy for it to be pointed at Ian, so he's going to be like, oh yeah, I introduced them, like.
But then other people said they'd seen Sophie and Ian conversing.
This is it.
I
we
don't
can't
think
rule
that's
any of those things out. Like it's very interesting. I think that there is more. I think unfortunately the police didn't do their job in this situation. That there is characters that weren't looked at close enough.
And the evidence,
including Ian Bailey, to be honest. Like, I mean, there's the evidence for Ian Bailey, doesn't rack up enough because it wasn't investigated as it should have been.
Yeah.
The other thing we have to state, though, too, is that there was skin and things found under Sophie's nails, and that was collected and DNA tested. Now, that DNA does not match Ian Bailey.
No.
Was that tested against Elfie Lyons?
No, I don't believe so.
No, it wasn't. So there's so many questions over to me, like as much as I'm like, Ian Bailey's fucking lunatic and is he capable of doing this? I have to say yes. Like he is a violent man. There's very definite personality traits there that would put him as a character who could do this. He absolutely reveled in what went on in all of that. Is there a motive for him to have done this? Not that I can find.
No, but he'd drink and be an absolute psycho and lose his shit.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me believe it was him, because he has a history of this.
Yeah.
He was drinking heavily that night.
Yeah.
This was a crime of opportunity. I don't think the person sought out Sophie in particular to kill her. Like,
no, but I think even if it was, say, Elfie, to me, it's like they've they're down at the gate and maybe she's closing the gate and said to him, "You've left the gate open," and that sparked an argument. And so not to be that it was, he's gone down there to kill her. He's gone down there to do whatever or something, and he's stuffed up and they've had an argument, and the two had a history of having arguments, and it's turned into what it did.
I still think it's Ian Bailey.
I'm not saying, and that's the thing with all this, I'm not saying that I think it was Elfie Lyons. I'm just putting out there saying that it's really unfortunate in this situation because we can't know who it was at this point.
No.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get back to
We'll go to
what
the
happened.
French case.
Yeah.
So now we get to the French side of the case. So the French decided, or according to their law, if a French citizen is murdered outside of France geographically, they can still run a murder trial within their country.
Yep.
Which is what they decided to do in Sophie's case.
So even like way prior to having the trial, they did in 2007.
Yes.
They actually ordered that the Sophie's body be exhumed and another post-mortem done. Following that, what they found there, they then also did a further investigation and a review of the investigation from the French side, not just – so previously it was the Irish side of things, but this is purely the French doing their own investigation of it all. So they found that all sorts of things that were not done correctly within that, and so that's why they wanted to then keep this moving and trying to find answers for the family. And this is again where her brother really was the front runner of like taking this on and pushing for that.
He started this thing called the Association for the Truth on the Murder of Sophie Toscan Duplantier, née Bugnol.
Yeah.
He credits creating this organisation as the catalyst for the French government to do what they ended up doing, because I think the family felt like the Irish Garda and courts had just, they were like, well, we've done everything we can, but they weren't satisfied. They weren't satisfied with that. They were like, well, and I mean, they had Ian Bailey in their sights.
Yeah.
They to this day believe Ian Bailey was the person who did it. And so in forming this association, they've then pushed the government to pursue legal action against Ian Bailey.
Yeah. So on February 19, 2010, the French issued a warrant for Ian Bailey's arrest based on their investigations. This was actually granted. The that he would be extradited on this arrest warrant to France by the Irish High Court. However, Ian Bailey, of course, as he does, took it to the High Court of Ireland and he took it to the Supreme Court. He appealed it to the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, it was he won that appeal. They had the grounds to say no, we're not going to extradite him, and so therefore he wouldn't be handed over to the French for an arrest. It wasn't until 2019 they actually decided in France to, as you were saying, move ahead with a trial in absenteeism of Ian Bailey, the person they were going to prosecute, or
that's it
at the point. So, which is really unusual. I mean,
very well. Actually, apparently not. There was precedent for this.
Yeah, but it's not like it's overly common though. It's not something they do all the time.
It's certainly not the first time that they prosecuted an international suspect in absentia.
Yeah.
So he was actually sentenced as well to 25 years in prison in a French federal prison.
Yeah.
Which, again, the Supreme Court upheld their no extradition decision. And so Bailey just basically got to live out the rest of his life in Ireland.
Yeah.
And he actually died on the 21st of January in 2024, aged 66, from a heart problem he had a heart attack and died.
Yeah. Nothing overly interesting.
No. But Sophie's family were kind of disappointed at the fact that he's now passed, because to them, I think they were hopeful that at some point they would see him in prison.
Yeah, or at least a conviction from an Irish court, to be honest. That would even still with him being dead, to be honest, would be, satisfying if that's what, if that's what happened, you want him held accountable.
Absolutely, you would want him held accountable.
Yeah, but I just don't know if we're ever going to get those answers. So in 2022, they announced a review of the new cold case investigation into it. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot that's come out of that. They've done DNA testing, further DNA testing, obviously between, since 1997, to now. DNA testing has certainly advanced, absolutely. But there's just been nothing found yet that links anything. And so they can definitely find more DNA, but as we said, it wasn't nothing linking Bailey to that degree, like DNA, etc., has been found at the scene.
Yeah.
So it does leave a big question mark over.
Look, it does. I personally think that on the balance of probability that Ian Bailey was responsible. Obviously, I don't have any facts to prove that. It's just a gut feeling, and that's just what I think has actually happened.
I mean, I think, if you sort of look at who he was as a person, you can certainly go, he fits the profile of someone who could do that. However, being a dick doesn't actually make you a murderer.
No, I know.
And in the same time, we've talked about a lot that, the fact is, you can be the nicest person you've ever met and they can turn out to be the murderer. And the person who, rubs you up the wrong way and does some really oddball things and is really an a-hole can turn out to not be the murderer.
Yeah. Look, I understand that, but I don't know. I've just gut feeling maybe. I'm not sure.
I guess on this one, I come and something, I think it was actually on Crime Analyst that I heard this say this, that I kind of went, that's where I'm getting this vibe again from this, is the staircase vibe.
Yes, it
and
totally
Michael
is.
Peterson.
Yes.
Because to me, this whole case is there seems to be a clear person who's done this, but we have no evidence for that person. And could it be a fucking owl?
Well, oh my God. So this is, oh my God. So this is actually the bit that I wanted to bring up that also relates back to the staircase. This is great.
What animal is picking up a cinder block? Sorry.
Oh no, wait for it.
Oh, what?
Wait for it. This is absolute gold.
Oh my God, bring it.
So there is a man who believes that Sophie died from a horse attack. And that the block, she actually fell. So this is his theory.
Okay.
She's woken up in the morning.
Yep.
She sees a horse out her window.
Yep.
And she goes out to the horse to feed it or to say hi to it. And that's why she's got her boots laced up, because she had time to do that.
Yep.
Don't know why she didn't have her dressing gown on. But
But you
anyway,
can imagine
details,
if she's just thrown that over her shoulders, that could just literally
I guess.
fall off you
Okay.
in any kind of attack. I did think that myself, like how does that come off in that kind of thing, with it being a human, not necessarily a horse. But yeah, if it's just draped over you, it could just fall off you in the middle of a frenzy.
I guess.
Maybe.
And this horse is not like the cut of Sophie's jib and has chased her. And apparently horses can be quite aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And has attacked her, and she's fallen on the concrete block. But it doesn't explain so many other things, like the blood on the house, the blood on the gates even. Because
But see, did Alfie put that there when he's gone to the body and then gone to the back door to go, hey, is Sophie home?
But wouldn't we know that? Wouldn't Alfie have said, oh, I must have had her blood on me and I've touched that?
But this is the thing. He wasn't investigated or asked those questions.
Yeah, I guess. But wait a minute. Can I just tell you why this guy thinks that this theory is valid?
Okay.
There was a Swedish case where a woman was killed down by a lake.
Right.
She and her husband had had a lot of issues, like as in issues within their marriage. There was a lot of abuse, physical and emotional abuse. And so when this woman's body was found, the police automatically went, well, the husband who's got a history of abuse has done it.
Yeah.
When the Swedish police actually so the husband was arrested.
Yeah.
In investigating this woman's death, what they actually found was all over her, there was elk fur and elk saliva.
So
Now,
I'm having owl feathers.
I know. I know.
Yep.
What actually happens is around this lake, there are a lot of apple trees.
Right.
The apples fall to the ground.
Yep.
And the elk eat the apples. But the apples have fermented a little bit. And so the elk get drunk from eating the fermented apples.
Yeah.
And when they're drunk,
They're nasty.
they're really aggressive.
Checks out.
So what they actually were able to prove in this instance was this Swedish woman was not murdered by her abusive husband, was actually murdered by a drunk elk.
That's not funny, but that's funny.
It's not funny. It's not funny, but it's so funny. And it's so reminiscent of the bloody owl theory in the staircase.
And the horse theory now for Sophie.
Yeah. And so this guy's like, well, I'm an expert in this Swedish elk case, so I think it was a potentially a drunk horse.
Nay, rather than hoot hoot.
Yeah. I mean, it's so far-fetched. And look, I think it's basically been disproven because there were no horse tracks or anything around.
Yeah,
there was,
right.
I mean, there were horses in the area.
Yep.
But none that were actually on Sophie's or Alfie's property, like because they had a gate that could have meant that livestock was contained within either of the properties.
Because if the gate had been left open, then livestock could have entered the property, and that's where she was very vigilant at closing it.
Yeah.
But it was open.
But you'd think you'd see hoof marks and, little feet or whatever. And there was none of that found necessarily.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, stranger things have happened. And when we were doing the staircase episode, we're like, well, the owl theory kind of fits a little.
I kind of go down with that one. I don't know.
I tried to deep dive this, but there's not a lot of other information out there because it's just one bloke who thinks this.
It interests me. But that's the thing that's what I guess my point is that I'd rather be that open as an investigator, kind of thing, and going, well, could this be an animal attack? Could this be, the neighbour? Could this be Ian Bailey? But could this be 20 other people in the local community? And that's the thing where I don't think anyone should ever be offended at being questioned by investigators in these situations. I'd rather rule out everything than I've just gone, oh, it's got to be Ian Bailey. I'm going to gun it for him.
I agree. I fully agree with what you're saying. So the Garda did have Ian Bailey in their sights right from the get-go, and I think it was to the exclusion of all others. I mean, as you say, look at Alfie for one.
Yeah.
Also, there were other people within Skull, other residents who had criminal histories, and they weren't necessarily looked into either. I don't know. Well, there's no evidence of them being questioned or being looked into. So I'm like, well, the Garda have dropped the ball,
unfortunately,
really.
and which is awful for her son and her family. That's not nice. That's not good. I think, unfortunately, a disservice was done. We can only hope that with cold case and the ability of the DNA testing getting better and other things.
Maybe they need to be looking for horse DNA.
Well,
maybe they're looking for the wrong.
Check that out.
What kind of profiles are they getting off this? Off her body.
This is the thing. I mean, to me, open it up to any possibility. Don't just be focusing on Ian Bailey. I'm not saying that doesn't mean he didn't do it. It just means be open to other possibilities so that we can narrow down. Well, if it was none of these other things and all we're left with is the circumstantial evidence that points to Bailey, then that becomes stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you.
Oh, wow.
I think that's kind of it. I mean, again, we say this every time, but if this is a case that particularly interests you, there is a lot of extra information out there. There's lots of information of people saying they saw different things about Ian Bailey, none of which has been substantiated. Things like people were like, oh, yeah, I saw his coat being soaked in the laundry trough and all this other stuff, but none of it's substantiated, so we haven't really brought it into today's discussion.
A whole lot more in terms of his court cases too that we haven't gone into. Like, he was hammer and tongs on court cases. I think he ended up spending something like $5 million in court.
But how did he get the money? Like, he must have had somebody bankrolling that because he wasn't that rich.
No, I don't know where he got it from. I have no idea.
I feel like somebody was on his side. Somebody with some money was helping him there.
Who would be on his side?
I don't know. I really don't know.
No.
Either that or he died with a lot of debt.
I think absolutely that's true too. Yes, but I don't know. Crazy. I mean, he did write a lot of articles, but not. Yeah, he wasn't rolling in $5 million. That's for sure. But yeah. No. Nope.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Two Crime Besties. If you like the cut of our jib and would like to buy us a coffee, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/2crimebesties, all one word. Please follow us on the socials. We really love engaging with our listeners over there. Send us a message, send us a DM.
Yeah, I love hearing
Share our page. We would be so grateful.
Yep.
And if you do, we might even give you a shout out on an upcoming episode.
We will. Absolutely. No, love hearing from everyone in the socials. I know I had a little bit of back and forth with someone that just in the last couple of days around the Alison Baden Clay, that was a local at the time and that sort of thing. And so sometimes we get little snippets of information from people that know intricate stuff because they were there at the time. So it's amazing who we can meet and chat
Engage
with on there.
It's
fascinating. So thank you for everyone that comes and puts in their opinion, because we're giving our opinions. Please give yours.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear you tell me that no, that's ridiculous, or the horse theory is it. Here for it.
That's it.
Excellent. All right, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay curious, crime besties.
Bye. Welcome back to...
Should we clap?
Oh, yeah. So profesh.